got to take big chances in order for the potential for a big positive outcome.
Hadouken!
Oh boy, we're gonna have a swell time tonight.
I mean, with artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon.
Hello, welcome back to A Boring Revolution, your number one news source for everything in regards to The Boring Company. Hope you're well today. So, I have come across this really quite excellently written article on Reddit, and I'm constantly asked this question and having to explain it in kind of several phases to the person asking it. I thought this article is such a good explainer. It's by a user called OKFishing4. If you go into the subreddit for Boring Company, it's about 5 sections down. So this is excellent because we constantly get this question, and this question is a bit of a silly one because I, like many people, also support public transport, trains, buses, even airports, anything that involves getting around, any kind of transport infrastructure, maglev, whatever it is, Uber. I support it and we should have more of it. However, that doesn't mean that we have to focus on one thing, and if we did that, then things won't be very efficient. There are lots and lots of different solutions for different places, different towns, different cities, different, densities of cities and towns. And I think the Boring Company is one of the best solutions, and it pretty much matches up with 90% of the world's settlements. So this article really goes into detail. So if you have a read, this is not a screed against transit. Loop is public transit. It is not a private highway for entitled Tesla owners. That kind of criticism has fallen away recently because people have started to get a better understanding. The typical person that makes this argument, why not build a train, is typically one of these train nerds or possibly even a cyclist. If you speak to these people, they're extremely angry at any idea that you can just replace an internal combustion engine car with an electric car. They think that they are exactly the same. They are terrible. We should get rid of all of them. There should be no cars. There should be no roads whatsoever. There should just be cycle lanes and bus lanes. And that is how everyone should be packed into buses like sardines. And everyone should pay the £3.50 a day. And it doesn't matter how long it takes you to get to work or how uncomfortable it is, or if you have to stand, whether it's on the bus or the train, you have to stand there and take it, and that's all. That's it. You got to go for it. But people like me and many other people, we don't ascribe to those kinds of views, and that is never going to happen. People love cars. People like using different forms of transit. Maybe even VTOL will take off at some point for a smaller percentage of users. But particularly for the Boring Company, this particular thread answers a lot of questions. I am also not advocating we rip up the great metros of this world and replace them with a loop. I could not agree more. I think Boring Company loop systems work best in cities, towns, villages, i.e. areas with less than 1.8 million persons, or places which have sort of a medium to low density or a medium to sort of mid-high density. That is where the Boring Company comes into its own. In very, very, very high density cities, Hong Kong, Tokyo, New York, London, that sort of thing, it's potentially not a viable option. But the vast majority of cities are less than 1.8 million. Certainly in the UK, there's a lot of cities that would benefit from a Boring Company system. Bristol, Norwich, Sheffield, Leeds, Liverpool, Manchester, Carlisle, Glasgow. These sorts of places would be perfect because they are, a suitable density. Cities which do not need nor can afford subways will find the loop's lower entry price and quick build time and ease of use compelling. Loop is enlarging the total addressable market for grade-separated public transit. Question, why not build a train? US train systems are very expensive. UK train systems, very expensive. Just for example, look at Crossrail. Look at HS2 already. Very, very expensive. Look at the recent extension to the Metrolink in Manchester. If you look at the cost to build each mile of Metrolink in Manchester, it seems to be going up at least 10 to 15% every year whenever they do a new extension. And, you know, over 40 years, that soon adds up. Just looking at this, so if you're wondering what this means, it means what percentage of the actual route is tunnelled. So the less is the better, really, for train systems. If you can have more of it above ground, then that's absolutely fine. I don't understand why people don't like above ground railways. You know, they can fit into a landscape perfectly adequately. So US $118 million per mile. Non-US, so that might include China, which is probably dragging this number down. But I'd guess that Europe is closer to 100 million per railway mile. If 20 to 80% of the route is underground, you're looking at around 323 million per mile, which is a hell of a number. I mean, really, Jesus, look at that, 323 million. In non-US areas, that is 286 million. Again, in Europe, I think that would be closer to 300. Then 80 to 100%. This is when it gets really, really expensive. Now, he gives this number here of 1.2 billion per mile. I think it's been a little bit unfair there. Really, if you looked at projects that have happened over the last sort of 30, 40 years in America, and you account for inflation, it's more like 511 million per mile. So $500 million per subway mile. I mean, wowza, that's crippling. Non-US 346. Now the loop, he's given a figure of 62 million per mile because he's pulled this number here, 52.5 million. That is actually not the correct number. The correct number is closer to 49. The reason being, included in this 52.5 million is the bond, which the Boring Company paid to, would it be Clark County or the Las Vegas Convention Center Visitors Authority, and that was kind of like an insurance policy basically. So the Boring Company got that money back, so it finished around 49 million. He makes some very good points here. At the LVCC, the second place tender was by Doppelmayr Cable Liner bid, which is a very, very interesting kind of train which is driven by a cable style system. 215, it's quite efficient, but it's very expensive to build. $215 million, which is, you know, 4 and a bit times more. Loop is an express public transportation system providing fast, non-stop travel to your destination. This allows for more stations, providing better coverage and convenience. Now, there's a caveat with that. You don't want too many stations. Ideally, you want the average distance between stations to be around 800 meters or around half a mile, maybe slightly more than that. It certainly provide better coverage than most subways, but you don't want there to be constantly vehicles entering and exiting the system, because then that can affect the throughput and the overall speed. Trains are slow to ride and arrive. The average subway speed in the USA is just 20 miles per hour, less than half of the projected 50 miles per hour travel speed of the Vegas loop. The Vegas loop is an extremely limited system, the way its alignment is set up. So you'd expect in future systems it to be closer to 80 miles per hour top speed, cruising speed of around 55-60 miles an hour. During the CS convention at the LVTC, the average wait time was 15 seconds. Average wait times for subways are currently anywhere from 2 to 17 minutes, with an on-peak median of 10 minutes. Now, that's not too bad, but it's nowhere near as good as what the Boring Company is achieving. Now, I anticipate when this rolls out to the whole of Las Vegas, it's going to be more like 1 to 2, maybe 2.5 minutes. In the UK, if you went to a train station, if say I went down to my local train station down here, if I didn't time it correctly, it could be 20-25 minutes in between services. So, you know, that's pretty damn good. But public transport is another question. Is better than yet another car lane. It's not. So basic. That's like saying let's put in yet another bus lane. But oh no, but buses carry a lot of people. Well, a car can carry a lot of people if you have a lot of cars in there, and they all got 6 seats, and they're all driven 10 metres apart, and they're all being driven at 65 miles per hour. You'll be amazed how much throughput you can get in just that one lane if the vehicle is full of passengers. Loop is public transit. It always has been, always will be, and you'll always pay a fare. Maybe at some point in the future you might be able to take privately owned Tesla vehicles into the system, but you might end up having to pay $1.50 per mile or $2.50, something like that. So it might be expensive, but it's an extra revenue source and it'll be limited numbers. It is not a private highway for Tesla owners. You arrive at a loop station on foot, pay for a fare, get in a vehicle, ride to your destination, then exit just like a subway. LVCC loop is free convention attendees. That's a bit of an anomaly. In the long term, you'll be paying $4, $5, $6, maybe even $7 per journey. Who pays the fare? Vegas Loop is a privately funded public transport system being built by the Boring Company, who is paying for the tunnels and business is paying for their own stations. That is the key differentiating factor, is that the Boring Company pays for the least expensive part of the project, which is boring the tunnels, and they really focus on the cost measures to ensure those tunnels are built efficiently. And then someone comes in at a later date, maybe it's a separate contractor, maybe someone pays the Boring Company, maybe the casino themselves have some kind of internal kind of management team, and they build a station either above ground or underground, and then they pay for that, and that's on them how they do it. They obviously need to fit in with the requirements of the Boring Company, i.e. what is the maximum gradient of a ramp, what is the maximum amount of parking or minimum amount of parking bays you need per hotel room, that kind of thing. So they bore all the risk to that, and obviously if the Boring Company is just paying for the tunnelling aspect of it, they should be able to get that well below $6 million per TBM mile, well below that, probably closer to 5. The reason I'm saying 5 these days is because inflation, people, because just inflation these days is out of control, and the cost of everything's obviously gone up, including construction materials. Royalties will be paid to Clark County and the City of Las Vegas for right-of-way access, and I presume those royalties will be paid annually, forever, or until a different agreement is made. But I think that is a useful source of revenue for these places, and they also get the benefits of having better transport links in their communities. Also seeing juice demand below. But this all the time. Get this one. These trains could carry more people because the train carriage has got 50 seats, and then you've got 2 carriages, that's 100, and then you can have like 20 people standing in each carriage. So that's a lot more, isn't it? Well, okay, how is that comfortable? How is that convenient? How is it good that you have to literally fight your way off the train? That's how it is certainly here when I go into Manchester. It's not comfortable, it's not convenient, it's potentially dangerous if there's an incident on the train. And also, just think of all the pathogens that are flying around on trains. Not good. It's not just about the capacity. That's the key thing. It's not just about the capacity. And remember, those trains might be empty for 6, 7, 8 hours of the day. And you can't take that train off service. If you have hundreds of cars, you could take some of those cars and put them in a warehouse somewhere, and they're not, expending any money. So you can react to demand much more it's a much more liquid process when you're reacting to demand, taking vehicles off the system. Capacity needs in the US seems modest, and actual median ridership demand for US urban rail systems, subways, light rail, hybrid rail, streetcars, appeared to be satisfied at 2,400 passengers per hour per direction. Not too sure where he got that figure from, but I believe him. It sounds about right. That's very similar to the Metrolink in Manchester. The LVCC loop is currently achieving 2,400 passengers per hour per direction with 4 passenger cars at 6-second headways. This will increase dramatically to around 3,000 pph/pd once they finish that last part of the Resorts World loop, and then it will increase again when they build the extension up to the Westgate Casino. So, you know, even in that limited system that's not essentially been that well designed, still getting 3,000. And for most people, that's great. You know, that's useful to them. They can get home on time and they can do so affordably. That, in combination with other forms of public transport, can have a massive impact on congestion. It's not just about one solution. It's not just let's build railways everywhere at whatever cost. That is not the answer, and that is not what is happening in America. You know, often these proposals get put forward and they're shot down because there's A, not the money there, and B, the value for money is not great, and it's very difficult to justify. Loop satisfies the need for low entry cost, expandable grade separated transit at a reasonable price, making it accessible to more cities and people. Loop doesn't need to match subway capacities to be cost effective and useful. So they've got these percentiles, obviously the quarters, 25. So operating peak capacity 9,640, 1,000. So again, you know, it's not as high as what you think it would be. And this one as well, God. But cars carry not many people. We could put more people in a train. But the train's very expensive. And then a lot of the time it's riding around and there's no one on it. At the latter stages of journeys, sometimes that train might only have 6 people on it. How is that efficient? The actual efficiency of moving people in an electric car and a train, if you measure it per passenger, is actually very, very similar. And not to forget as well that the trains have massive maintenance costs, which we'll come to in a moment. More tunnels can be built. So if you're at capacity, if you've hit that, you know, 3,000, 4,000 passengers per hour per direction, I think it's going to be more than that. I think that some parts of the Las Vegas system will be above 7,000 passengers per hour per direction. Then you can just build more tunnels underneath it and then stitch them in together. It's not as difficult as you would think it would be. In fact, because it's deeper, the actual ground conditions are probably better. Higher occupancy battery electric vehicles carrying 8 to 16 people can be used without changes to the tunnel or station infrastructure. The capacity of 8 to 16 passenger minivans running at high speed highway intervals is surprising to most people. So 14,000, 28,000 passengers per hour per direction. So this is the robo-van. Now, I won't labour this point anymore, but using a robo-van in the Boring Company system and making that the standard vehicle would massively improve efficiencies, massively improve throughput, massively improve safety, and also massively improve the overall speed of the system. It would be, because it's built for one thing. It was also improve the quality of the ride for people, because that means you've got more room in the vehicle. You're not having to duck down. The efficiency of getting in and getting out of vehicles is much quicker because you've got self opening and closing doors. The entire Vegas loop is targeted to serve 57,000 passengers per hour. But tunnels are dangerous. You can't get out, and there's I mean, again, this is another question that I keep seeing from people, and it's like they're reading a script. It's like someone has given them a piece of paper and says, go talk to people about the Boring Company and read this script. And we have to shoot. There's been no fires, no accidents, no near misses in the Boring Company system. It's very, very well ventilated. It's well beyond compliance with all relevant fire and fire escape regulations and emergency escape legislation. LVC loop satisfies National Fire Protection Associated Code NFPA 130. Stations are less than 2,500 feet apart and service exits to the surface. So again, I was talking about half a mile. Within the tunnels, there is nearly 3 feet of space on either side. Not sure about that one. I think it's a bit less than that. It's just over 2 feet, 2 and a bit feet. I think it's like 700 mil, not 3 feet. It says nearly there. To be fair, it says nearly. This is why I prefer using millimeters, because feet is a bit, it's not as accurate, is it? If it says 700 millimeters either side, including 18-inch of road surface on either side, yeah, that sounds more like it. Roadways can serve as the evacuation route, which is normally clear and free of obstructions and touch hazards. There's no combustible materials in those tunnels either. It's concrete and a concrete road deck, and hopefully a sprinkler system above that, and full lighting as well. Dual redundant fans moving 400,000 cubic feet CFM of air, not cubic meters, cubic feet of air, provides a critical velocity of 312 feet per minute, ensuring to direct smoke downstream while egress and firefighting happen upstream. The road deck has embedded water pipes and connection vaults, supplying over 250 GPM at 125 PSI. Underground station has sprinklers, and I would advocate for running sprinklers down the entire length of the tunnels as well. I just think that it just makes things so much easier. Right, rather than this video going 30 minutes, let's just conclude on this. But trains are more energy efficient. This is another question I get. They are not. If you work it out per passenger, electric vehicles, specifically a robo-van, could be much more efficient at moving people around per energy unit than the New York subway system. So energy use, watt hours per passenger mile, 165. If you have 2 passengers in a Model Y, you also get the same number. Now imagine if you had a robo-van with 10 passengers, 10 seats, 10 passengers, and an extremely efficient drag coefficient and low rolling resistance, all these sort of things multiply themselves. Multiple different gearing ratios on the wheels as well for different speeds, or 2 different gearing ratios. You theoretically could get this below 70 watt hours per passenger mile, easily below 70, potentially below 60. And when you get to that stage, even if you're measuring long distance journeys using like Amtrak or some other, or even electric trains, like Hitachi electric trains in the UK, you would be very, very close to what they're using per passenger. And at that point, it doesn't really matter anyway, because the difference is so small that no one really cares. And also, there's less maintenance, so the actual cost to move a passenger from A to B is always going to be less with a Tesla electric vehicle than the best, most efficient Hitachi pure electric train overhead wires. 1 passenger in a Model Y, 324. Average US subway, 409. That seems very high. I wonder if there's like an anomaly in there. Average US light rail, 510. Average US auto, 1.5 passenger average, 817. Jesus Christ. Light truck, US transit bus. Oh my goodness, that can't be right. Really? Interesting. Maybe it's because there's 7 passengers and the bus can accommodate 50. Okay, so quick. Let's just see what else there is. See that. Just to finish on this one here, maintaining rail is cheaper than maintaining roads. Absolutely not. I don't know who the hell would ever ask. To be fair, I've never been asked that, but you think of all the infrastructure that goes with railways, whether that's drainage, bridges, underpasses, you know, old tunnels. Old tunnels are absolutely shockingly bad when it comes to maintenance, certainly in the UK. They're absolutely saturated with water and require often like year-round repairs. And the rails themselves wear down, and you get slippage in the ballast. I mean, it could go on and on and on. Whereas if you have a concrete road deck underground, and you've over-engineered that concrete road deck, which I hope the Boring Company would do, it's got no exposure to weather. It's not got no exposure to you know, intense sunlight. It's not got differentiating hot and cold spots. You know, you could potentially go 40 years without having to resurface that road deck in a Boring Company tunnel, and even then you might get away with just grinding off the top screed and then replacing it with a new one. So the cost of roads, even if you end up with 4 underground tunnels and you're comparing that to 2 railway lines, a northbound and a southbound line, at least, well, let's see what numbers he gives here. $7,000 per lane per mile. I think he's given a figure for it, but you'd be looking at, for a railway line per mile, easily 100 grand, maybe less than that. Let's say 80 grand per mile, something in that kind of ballpark. Obviously, depending on what part of the world you are, but even in a very temperate climate, it'd still be very expensive. Anyway, there you go. So that was a great little thread. You should read it, you should like it, you should comment on it. I thought it was excellent, and that's why we've done such a long video on it today. Okay guys, hope you enjoyed the video, hope you learned something. If you became upset and irritated by the video and you're screaming, just build the train at the screen. You have maybe some kind of mental issues and you need to seek help. And yeah, we're building the Boring Company system. You can't stop us, and we're continuing to expand it, and I'm going to continue to cover that on this channel and support the Boring Company, and I hope you do also, because it's pretty cool. Okay guys, take care, see you on the next video. Thanks to all my patrons, and remember guys, don't be boring. Take care, goodbye.
Winner, winner, machine dinner.
Come get some. Damn, I'm good.
Oh boy, we're gonna have a swell time tonight.